Hey, I'm Taylor Dorsett, and this is the Professional Technical Interviewee. Technical interviews are hard, and every company does them differently. On this show, I interview engineering leaders to see what they look for in technical candidates, and then they perform a real technical interview with me. I hope you enjoy.
Great. Well, Brian, we are back. The ball is in your court here. You've given me a question in CodePen that I've got up, but I'll let you take it from here.
So I'm kind of going to reset and go into interview mode. So we'll go through the process that I mentioned earlier. So yeah, introduction. I am Brian Montana. I am an engineering manager and also still contributing senior software engineer over at Rally Health, which is now under United Healthcare. And I've been here for about over 3 years now, and located in the Chicago office. So yeah, go ahead and tell me about yourself, Taylor.
Cool. I am Taylor Dorsett. I'm currently a software engineer too at Home Chef. We work on meal delivery kits. My team specifically works on the sign-up funnel and basically customer acquisition side of things, which is a lot of fun. Mostly working in React, JavaScript, and Ruby on Rails. And I've been there about 6 months. Then I worked at a couple of small companies and some startups before that. Before that, I had a career in tech recruiting for many years, which was a lot of fun as well. But that's how I lost all my hair. So yeah. I think that's it. And then I run a podcast as well, which I usually mention during interviews.
Awesome. So for this challenge, what you'll be doing is you're going to be decompressing a compressed string. So the input that we are seeing for the function will be a compressed string in the format of number with brackets and then a string. And the decompressed output will be a string written a number of times. So I've also provided at least an example of input and output. And within the challenge itself, I always introduce various edge cases that we will want to test for. And each of those edge cases are identified within the rules just below the outputs. And of course, verify any assumption with me as you are going. If you want to ask any questions related to the direction that you are heading, also feel free to verify with me. And also, if you need to kind of confirm or build your confidence on anything that you are implementing, you are more than welcome to look through various solutions through like MDN, Mozilla Developer Network. You can Google solutions. But of course, no solutions that are a direct representation of what we are trying to solve.
Got it. So I shouldn't copy and paste this into Google.
Yeah. To me, it would still be smart, but we're testing for engineering.
Sure. Cool. So this is an interesting question. So as I understand it, we will get input like this one, which is always going to be an integer followed by an array of letters, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And then we are going to spit that out the integer number of times. And it looks like based off of this example, if we don't have an integer in front of it, we just want that a single time?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, got it. Cool. This is interesting. So to make another input-output example here, let's see if my shortcuts are different in this, which is interesting. Let's just do to make this simple, we're going to do AB, AB, C. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Great. I would have some edge cases to test, but I know you mentioned the rules. Let me just read through these. A number can have more than one digit. Okay, so we could have 10. Just means A. Got it. Do we have a limit or an upward bound of what our integer might be?
Let's say, let me just check the test cases real quick because I want to make, okay. So yeah, like we'll just go off of 10 being the highest number at the moment.
Okay. Got it. Cool. Then repetitions could occur inside another. Whoa, nested. That's interesting. Okay. So for example, 2A becomes 2. So we go AAA because we get 3AA.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And then we get 1B. Oh, 3A. Okay. That's an interesting one because that complicates things. Characters allowed as inputs, including digits, small English letters, and brackets. Characters allowed as input, including digits. Oh, include digits. Okay, so you're just saying that it's always going to look like this. Basically, it's going to be this format.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
got it. Okay.
And yeah, 0 to 9, A to Z.
Yeah. Great. And digits only are only to represent number of repetitions. Great. Meaning we don't want to add these to the string or anything like that. Or is there anything else I might be missing about that?
Nope.
Yeah. Okay. Letters are just letters. Great. Brackets are only part of the syntax. Brackets are only part of syntax of writing repeated substrings. Okay. So all of these things are basically just saying this is explicitly what these things mean.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. And then this is going to be one of my questions. The input's always valid, so no need to check its validity. And by valid, assuming we're not going to just get an integer or something, but would, I guess this is, I start looking at edge cases. Is this a valid input?
Yeah. Yeah,
okay,
that's
got
valid. Yeah, like we wouldn't see like the plus symbol come through.
Yeah.
And we wouldn't see like a pound symbol come through.
We're not going to get this. Basically anything that would resolve to null or false or whatever. So, okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Great. So I think I understand this. Let me just put this nested one up here so I remember that that is a thing we have to account for. And that was this one, which is fun.
And the first test that we have unskipped is on line 51. And so as you kind of progress through it, we'll go ahead and start removing some of the skipped ones.
Got it. This is our testing. Is the X means that we're not running it right now?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, got it. I'm not. Is this just? I'm not familiar with. I don't do a ton of testing. Whoops. it's my flaw as an engineer.
Yeah. So this is running off of Jasmine, I believe. I wrote this. I wrote some of these like years ago, or at least the frameworks years ago. So I just have to verify. I think it is Jasmine though.
Okay.
Yeah, it says it. Yeah, it says it right here in the display on the right.
Got it. Cool. And then learning objective, this question gives you a chance to practice with strings, recursion, algorithms, compiler, atomic loops, also opportunity to work coding with better efficiency. Yeah, so when you said basically 10 is our max integer, that's when I thought recursion is likely possible here. I'm not strong with recursion, so that is something that is not how to actually make that solution does not come to mind, but the idea of a recursive solution comes to mind because it looks like our integer is limited, right? Or our potential routes could be limited. I guess on the flip side of that, is there a max length of what we'd expect these strings to be within the arrays?
Not at the moment. but we can imagine that they won't be exceptionally long. So
Okay.
With what we are currently testing for, we shouldn't see anything beyond like 200 characters.
Yeah. And do you have any time space constraints that you're targeting? You'd like me to target?
We can just go the entire interview length. So we can see how far you kind of progress. And if there's any need for like hints or guidance, we can then kind of start working towards those.
Cool. Great. Sorry, I meant more like time space complexity.
Oh, yeah. No, we mostly interested in just kind of resolving the challenge. So like if you can brute force it, that's great. And we can talk about like optimizing from there.
Yeah, so it's an interesting problem. So let me talk through some of this and then I'll try to jot some of this down once I've formulated it a little. Like a brute forcey solution that comes to mind is basically we iterate through the string or the input, and we're going to, if we encounter a number, we're going to look for a bracket, and then after that, we're going to build some type of string, right, that we want to replicate the integer number of times, right? Then we'd have to continue to look for, because we can have these next ones, we continue to look for another integer, another bracket, or a closing bracket, right? And basically build up our string, and then once we've, closed out our max number of brackets or whatever our open number of brackets are, then we could basically paste that into the string, the integer number of times, and then continue through the rest of our string with any other integers we hit, and then just append that to the end of our string. That seems it could work. The difficulty I see with that is basically it doesn't seem terrible, but iterating through the string and tracking integers, open brackets, closing brackets. That's, I think, when that complexity could start to build up, and basically would be like a big if-else decision tree, how I'm thinking of it in my head. So that is a possible solution. As I mentioned, there's probably a decent recursive solution that'd be like 4 lines that I don't necessarily know how to do. But that would be, we would likely do the same thing where we're looping through and basically working our way through whatever our input string, and then checking if we've hit opening or closing brackets, right? And then they're just passing up whatever that subset of that string is back up to our recursive tree. I don't know exactly what a base case would look like for that, but that would probably be an ideal solution. I'm trying to see if there's any other autonoma. I don't actually know, since I'm treating kind of this as maybe clues, right? Autonoma. Can you define what you mean by that?
Let me think about that. I think that was supposed to be automation.
Got it.
So
okay.
I will go ahead and delete that. There we go.
Okay, so to mention those solutions again, and maybe do some pseudocode. Let's say I'll just write recursive solution down here. Not sure how to implement, and then maybe more, let's say iterative solution here. Just going to pseudocode some of this. So create function takes an input in a week, decompress to compress string. Okay, so it is actually a string format. So even though we have arrays in here, our goal is this is going to still be wrapped in a actual string, right?
Yeah, and down below on line 50, on line 65, 66, we have kind of that example that we would see.
Got it. Okay, cool. Great. Oh, so if I wanted to, I can just add tests if I wanted to test these other,
yeah.
We have certain test cases, but I could just basically recreate that test with any of our other ones if we wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
Great. so my pseudocode create a function that takes in an input string. Within that, the first thing like they want to do, I talked about, we're going to need to make some variables. What I talked about, iterate. Does CodePen not have spell check in it? If I'm looking like an absolute moron, blame my homeschooling. I took a couple of years where maybe I missed key grammar lessons, and usually a nice little blue squiggly line helps me. So either I'm killing it
yeah.
or there's lots of errors.
Yeah, it does. It unfortunately does not have spell check. I do not hold that against anyone ever because I am an awful speller.
Great. Well, I it's a mix of doing it fast and not being able to spell at the same time is always fun. And actually, without the blue line, it makes it less stressful. I just in my head, it's all right. So iterate through our input string. So if basically conditional bound integer, we want to. Well, if we found an integer, the next thing we would want to look at is, do we have a bracket? I'm trying to think, will we always have a bracket immediately following an integer? Which I think we will, right? Oh, it could be potentially another integer. So if we found an integer, check next character to see if bracket. Again, this is the ugly decision tree version of this. Conditional if it's an integer, we want to, let's say, store that. I'm gonna create something like and variable if it's a bracket, check next character. So once we've hit a bracket, so if we know we got integer, we moved into a bracket, now we're going to look at the next number. So it could be a character, which would be great, but it could also be another integer, right? So this is where I think this loop, if we found an integer, we check the next character for the bracket or an integer. So if we've got an integer, then we're going to store this, and then we're going to come back through, check if it's a bracket or an integer. Let's say it's, yeah, this is when it gets difficult because we've got kind of nested integers. So this current integer.
And we can always try to solve for the first test case and then try to build up from there.
Yeah, that might be a good way to go with this. The more of this I do, the more this feels like a very clear recursive solution. Or like there's a lot of great recursive basic things that would lead me to a recursive solution that I don't necessarily know how to do. So I think if we solve for maybe, let's go for just this test case here, and then maybe we can iterate on this. And I think this is where a lot of these iterative solutions get complicated when you start adding in other rules and you realize I can't just check if it's a current integer. I have to also check if it's a bracket. So let's pull this one down here just so I have that in front of me. Okay, so same idea. We want to take our input string. We'll create this, starts as nothing. We iterate through our input string. If we found an integer, which we have, we want to check and see if the next character is a bracket. For right now, we don't actually care if it's an integer, but we'll probably come back to that. Let's see. And then if the next character is a bracket, then we want to check if character is I was going to say string, but I guess A through Z. I don't know if there's a better way to implement that, but check if it's an actual letter. If it is to current, let's say something like this, right? String var, so we're gonna make this appear as well. We've got a current string variable, and then if that's all it was, right, we could basically we want to do the same. Want to check the next one, check the next one, and check the next one until we find a closing bracket. If opening, so if we're coming back through, if we see that A now, we've saved that to current, or we've added A to current string. So this would be A, and we are right here in our string, loop through that. So now we are at B. B. So let's see. Our conditional would. This is almost an. I'm saying if we found an integer, but really I'm talking about a nested loop, right? Because if we found an integer, then I want to go within and see what's within that subset. If we found an integer, iterate through, if that makes sense. If we found an integer, well, we would still check to see if the next character has a bracket or an opening bracket. If it is, check if iterate until find closing bracket. So that's where my nested loop would be, right? So once we found an opening bracket, we would iterate through until we find a closing bracket. So then each character would be added to our current string, which for this example, so now if we're coming through back to A, just to make sure I didn't break anything, we've got A, iterate, we're assuming we found our 2, then we found our bracket. Now we've got A. We're going to go to our next character, which would be B. So that's also added to our current string here. So we've got A, B in here. Then we found a bracket. So we're going to end that loop. It's going to break out, and then we're going to be in the end of our string. So this will end as well, and then we will turn current string. So that seems like it would work for this problem. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah. So within the context of this first input, we would at least look for and identify an integer. And then once we have that integer kind of stored, then we would look for the first opening bracket after the integer. Then we would iterate through the remainder of the string to find that closing bracket, and anything within those brackets we would identify as the string. And yeah, so far that's looking good for at least this case.
I did not do this piece, right, which is basically let whatever it is result string string plus, or what would be current string plus doing strings and math together.
So it would. We do have the option.
At times, right?
Oh yeah.
Like that's. I'm sure there's a nice way to do that, right? But that's essentially what I want to do is populate that that many times, and then return result string instead of current string.
Yeah.
Okay. So that could work. And then just how to do this, I would need to think this slightly, but I think this all makes sense. And I wouldn't have any difficulties. It should be an iterative approach. I would have a nested loop. So this is the pseudocode. I could code that up if we want to do that now, or we could look at other test cases and start adding some other complexity to it. What do you prefer?
We can start coding that now, and then afterwards we'll see if the next test passes.
Cool. Great. Is it okay if I change this, or will that? It doesn't look like that'll break anything.
No. Yeah, that won't break anything.
Cool. Great. So I said we'll take input string. Zero. Index is less than our input string dot length. Let's actually get into this. So we want to if input string index is equal to I think there's like a nice like this way to do that. I could also put like have 1 to 10 in a array and then check like if included in that array. I don't know the syntax for this one. I could look that up.
Yeah, it would be, so like in JavaScript, it would be type of prepended before input string.
Type of.
So I'll go ahead and type. It would be that, and it would be input string index. And of course, more than welcome to look up MDM to verify any of it.
Got it. Okay, so
oh yeah. So if you look above, you'll see what I set up for.
Got it. Yes. And is this? I can look. Would that work correctly for checking if it's an integer? Or...
it would be number. Wait.
Number.
Yeah, number. I always have to ask myself because it'd be lowercase.
Lowercase. Okay.
Let me check on that because I always get TypeScript types crossed with JavaScript types.
Yeah. Well, and I got Rails code bouncing around in my head, which is all syntax is just different enough that it's fun. Okay, so assuming we found a number, right? Then what do we see next? We will. So this is where it gets a little funky. Do we want to iterate immediately, like to our next index, or just check, index +1 as our next one? Because we'll never have, at least in this example, I don't think we'll ever have an integer followed by the end. It's never going to be 2 then the end of our string, so we shouldn't run into an issue with doing +1. I just don't know if that makes sense where we're going to have our input and we kind of want to just immediately iterate to the next one.
Yeah, I like the idea of looking ahead.
Okay, cool. Let's look ahead. If index +1 is equal to an opening bracket, great. Now we want to do, I set another for loop. We want to go until index 2 is input string. Well, we want to iterate through until we find a closing bracket, which.
Yeah, so yeah, if we know that index +1 is where that closing bracket is, maybe we can always just start there.
and put a plus like that. That's where our second index starts, and then until it hits the end of that length. That makes sense. Okay, and then oh, we forgot to do our current int. Current int equals string index. We're gonna update that, and then our current string is going to equals index 2. This is a closing bracket, so we want the one after that, which again we could do as +1, which feels like we're looking
that
ahead.
could always get out of bounds.
Yeah. If that equals this, we could do the same type of conditional here, right? If
Oh yeah, and I'm just going to do a little quick correction here because I communicate something incorrectly. So on line 76, we can use type of. There's also the option of using number. So one of the things with JavaScript is that that specific character would be referenced as a string. So we would need to do some sort of conversion.
Got it. That makes sense. Do we? I was about to do the same thing, or some version of the same thing. But this is feels a little hacky. But if input, if this one is not equal to an opening bracket, and it's not equal to a closing bracket, then we want to add it. We're just looping through all of these though. We'll just loop through the end of it. Equals a closing bracket. Just return. I don't know if return or I think that'll get us out of the loop.
Yeah, return will exit. So return will exit not just the loop, but also the function itself.
Break get us out of our loop here? Yeah. Okay, so this basically we get this weird if check because I couldn't think of a better way to skip past this first one, right? Which is our opening bracket. Okay. So basically, if we hit a closing bracket, then we'll break out of this loop. Otherwise, if this is an opening bracket, we is not equal to an opening bracket, then we will add this, right? So that should add each one of our things to our current string. Plus equals is what we want to actually append it to that string. And our for loop should run the length of the string, which is fine for now. And then right before the bottom, let's see what result string. Oh, we'd probably want to do this within like our integer. Like once we've, because we want to do this before we get rid of current index, right? Or before current index would change. And this is another thing I'm trying to think of a good way to do it. We could you could do a loop, but that feels unnecessary.
So So yeah, we could look up a property called repeats on MDN.
Let's do that. MDN. Great. Method constructs a new string. That's what we want to contain a specific number of copies of the string on which it was called concatenated together. Exactly what we want. Cool. So it's just repeat. And if I understand this quickly, chorus equals chorus dot repeat 5.
Oh, one thing to note, with JavaScript variables, they cannot begin with numbers.
Thought that syntax highlighting looked a little funky. Okay, so I'm expecting that to spit out chorus 5 times. Yeah, okay, great. Cool. Make sure I'm spelling it correctly. Equals, so it's the string with the method called on it the number of times. String repeat current int times. Okay, assuming this is nested in the right spot, we still have access to current int here. Current string looks like it's got some weird. There we go. And result string needs to be created outside of loops. Okay. We don't want to let here. All right. So I am expecting this to, what's our first test? A, B, C. Okay. I don't think that should have any issues that our A, B test didn't have. So expecting it to come out correctly. Can I run this?
Oh, so one of the nice things is this is always running, so we can see the expected output.
Oh, people have been seeing this syntax error for 20 minutes that I haven't paid attention to.
That's just part of the history. It's probably been resolved by now.
Okay. So this is cleared already.
Yeah,
so do I need to run?
So it just automatically runs every time that you kind of finish typing and let it sit for just for a little bit. So it's already ran, and that's the output that it's seeing.
This is the error. Okay, undefined ABC, undefined ABC, undefined ABC. Okay. So where might we be adding an undefined? Probably here. If it's not equal to this one. So let's check what's coming out of here every time, because it seems like something is getting in there that we don't want. If it's undefined, it might not be super helpful, but we'll see. We're getting ABC. So maybe not there. So current string. Current string. I think if I need an existing string to call repeat on it, so maybe since I don't actually have a string as current string, that could be our issue here.
Yep.
There we go.
There you go.
Okay.
Nice.
Cool. It's funny is I would normally give this a string value because it's going to be a string data type, but I thought it was going to be just appending to it. And I was like, I don't want to have a weird space at the beginning or something to worry about, but that's fine. Okay. So that case works with this solution. So how are we done on time? You want to move on to another test case?
Yeah. So what do we have? We have 35 minutes left.
Yeah. Cool.
Okay. So yeah, I'll go ahead and unlock the next test case.
Okay, so our next test case So this is where we got a second digit, right? So now we've got to check. Okay, so we talked about this a little bit early on, so hopefully it's not too difficult. I think I mentioned it here, right? Instead of checking if if our next character is an opening bracket, we also want to check if it's a digit, right? I'm gonna just just update this pseudocode so I'm not looking at it later and it's broken. Okay, so it's still fine if we find an integer. Set current int to an integer. Check if the next opening bracket. If it's an opening bracket, we want to do if one thing. If it is not an opening bracket, we want to do another thing. So, so we could have a, an else on this side of it, which would basically have a slightly different case and all this code repeated. It's not ideal. If I was going to do something like that in production, we could abstract this loop, right? Which would be nice. Like, we have a little helper method, which was, build string. We could call that, and that would be one way to clean up this code. So it's not as ugly. But let's see if there's another way I can think of checking this without.
So instead of kind of just stating that it would be ugly if this was left in, what would be kind of the benefit of abstracting that code out, at least from like various programming pillars? So like when you think about architecture.
Yeah, well, this could be basically it would be a function within itself, right? And we could call that function here, but also, potentially elsewhere, which would be useful for us. It also makes this code as a whole significantly more readable. And I think it makes drier code, right? Because we're not duplicating this. We can just have one place where we're calling this build string method, right? Which actually, because it's doing a singular thing, I think it makes a good method, or would make a good method, right? Versus trying to fit this. I mean, I guess we're building, one kind of function to do this whole thing, but it would make a nice little chunk.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
So we could do that. Is there a way to just check if it's an integer instead? So could we just immediately, before we get into that even, so check here, right? Because we're updating our current integer. And before we even update this current int, if we just check the same thing, but +1. Yeah, so this is doing that conversion. So we'll check if that next one is. Then we would do current int plus equals index +1. Then this one right now would be so first thing we want to do is set the one that we know is a number to it. Then we want to check the next one. If it is, then I don't think we can. That's interesting. So our integer, I don't think we could plus equals, because it would be treating that this is a number currently, right? Or we're checking if it's a number here, but that's using this number syntax. So I think it's still a string, right? When we're assigning it, this is a string.
Yep.
So this should work as a string.
Yeah, and one thing to note, since this is possibly going to return a 0, within JavaScript, that is technically a falsy value. So we should do an additional check.
Got it. if it is this, or because we would want it in the same check. That should account for it. Right, yes, because the data conversion. This doesn't need to be string. Okay, and then because current int, confusingly named, is actually a string, can I? Oh boy, Control D does not grab all instances of that. Well, I would, if I could easily access all the current integers, I would rename the current int string right now. But current int, because it's a string, we should be able to just append this integer string +1 onto that. So in the example of 10, that should be fine. How does that impact this? If that was 10, or if this was a 0 that we've now got, this should be 10. This would still be 0. This would still be nothing. And then what is our, just trying to make sure I'm tracking this variable. This would be equal to, 0. So it would hit this check, which would not trigger would not trigger this. So it would not go into our for loop, which would be an issue. So it would come back up here. It would check, is this an it? Oh, but this would be, and then I think we're going to add this one again. So then we're going to actually end up with 100, right? Just not what we want.
And so we could be running, and so we're definitely running into the potential issue of like doing the look ahead multiple times.
Right. Yeah. Well, right now, because we know it's a 2 integer, I think we said it would be 2 integers max, right? Like we could add if it's this, and whatever it is, current and dot length is 2, or is it
It would be
1 because of our get confused.
Well, that would come back as looking at 0, which, yeah, that would be correct if we are looking to replace that value completely.
This would come back as,
it would be returned as 0 initially, so that would return truthy, and then
our second int. So then it's gonna come back as 1, which should iterate through correctly. So that would get added as it. Oh, sorry, no. The first time it would come through, it would grab. So our current integer be 0. Let's say we get to our first, whatever our index would be our first integer. So in our test case, this would be 3 would be our current int. Or sorry, we're trying to test 10. So 1 would be our current int, with this being 1 is our current string. And then it's going to look at the second one right away, right? And then, which would be 0. So then it should add that to make it 10. It's not gonna do this the rest of this loop. Let's come back and look at this. Oh, because it's not going to be truthy. We're not even going to make it to our. Got it. Interesting. So you can break it out in the method. That would work, I think. As a way to basically just do an else. I think I'm trying to even remember where I said that, but basically do an else on the other side of this if check. If it's that else if
And so one thing that we can always consider for this is, do we still need the current input after we have looped through this second loop here?
do we still need the current integer?
Yeah. So like once we provide that,
we use it down here.
Mm-hmm. And do we need it after we've gone through everything then? So like if we go through it once, do we still need this here?
Not really. Well, we would if we had other things, but right now we're only care about, we only have one integer to worry about, right? So we don't care about this check, right? Once we've gotten into here, right? So it does make sense. I guess we can do two different loops. We basically pull all of this out. So we do one where we basically have one loop that's just focused on getting whatever the integer is, and then one that's focused on building the string. I'm trying to think if that would work or not. Is that what you were?
So in the same process that we are kind of getting the string for the current string, we could probably do the same approach for the current integer. And with that one pass, we could always add the value to the current integer. And if we don't see a number for the next one and we see the opening bracket, we could then assume that we can move into the current string, into looking for the current string.
That makes sense. I think that is what I was trying to do with this, right? Was basically check if we were doing that first. But I think doing it as the else if still makes sense. Should be the same, except index +1. So I don't think that would necessarily break anything else. I'm not seeing the test come through, so I can try to see what it might be.
Oh, and so I'll just kind of explicitly state this. So instead of doing the look ahead, we could actually just do a comparison in the if else statement for the current index to see if it's an opening bracket, so that if we keep looping through, we can collect those integers until we see that opening bracket.
Got it. That makes sense. So rather than, so we just like by default add the next one. Sorry, I said got it and maybe I don't got it. Just saying is we can compare current integer, which would be, this is our first loop 1. And then like making a loop that just does that.
Oh, not even not even a loop. We could still, since we are already in the loop, we can just have this as kind of a collection of if-else statements based upon what we currently have. So if it is a number, and I'll just go ahead and slightly update this. So if it is a number that's greater than -1, then we could, instead of replacing that value, if we step through it again, what would be kind of the next approach? So like we see 1, we update current integer with this current character, which would be 1. So we could just kind of increment it, add it to the current int, or at least the int representation of the string.
Got it. That makes sense. And then, okay, so that makes sense. So then we're saying if this, oh, we don't even need to worry if it's, so we don't need to look ahead at all here, right? Because this should just add any integers, right?
Yeah.
Because input, we leave this the same because input string +1 would not be a bracket until this is populated with all the numbers.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense. Cool. Do I have, oh, this is my, see if there's any syntax that's yelling at me. Let's see, we've got an open. I'm so used to my color-coded syntax highlighting that I don't know how to.
Oh, yeah, I'm going to actually check myself now because I can't see offhand. So I'm just checking in VS Code just to verify.
Yeah. Yeah, good call. We got an open that looks like it goes all the way down, so we need at least one more. That opens. Oh, I was missing a. There we go.
Cool.
The first if check needed another one on it here. Okay.
Oh yeah, there we go.
Cool. Expected string to equal this. What are we doing differently? Did I move this one up one too many?
Oh, so I think we are running into the same potential issue with current int, which is at the moment a string, and current string. So we might be adding that undefined that is initially part of the variable when we do not state it as an empty string.
Makes sense. Do we don't get the, oh, and I was trying to figure out why we wouldn't have got that issue last time, but I think it's because we weren't trying to add anything. We were just doing equals. Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there we go.
Cool. Well, knowing how long this took, the third one would probably be a whole different level of complexity. I think we're good to call it there, but that's an interesting question for sure. And I think this, I have been in this situation in interviews where I go, I know an iterative approach basically becomes a huge decision tree, right? Of like, you slowly start adding test cases to where it gets more and more complex. And I've used recursive solutions in the past to try to account for that. Is there any other approach that you recommend that like, oh, this is a great way to tackle this type of problem where you feel yourself just basically accounting for each new test case as it goes?
We would be able to probably break everything down by looking at the closing brackets, especially when we are considering the nesting approach. We can assume that an opening bracket could potentially have another opening bracket along the process. So if we're looking for a closing and we kind of step back to an opening bracket, we know that without a doubt, there is no other like opening bracket that references something else.
That makes sense.
And
so almost finding the closing ones first and then working our way backwards.
Yeah.
Got it. That makes sense.
And yeah,
Cool.
like the way that I kind of set it up with the stages is just to kind of determine like the level of expertise that someone might have.
Yeah. I think it's an interesting approach because it definitely lets you, like, I'm sure there's people that have that solution in 30 seconds and then this one in a couple minutes. And then it's like, okay, this is when it, like, once you start getting nested, that's when it actually, you start to push some people. So that's interesting.
Yeah. And
cool.
For like your level of experience, like very well done, like wonderful, honestly, for like 6 months. Wow.
Well, a year and a half. So a year and 6 months. But I would say less impressive at that level, but I'll take it.
Still good. Still very good.
Yeah.
I would.
Cool. Well, anything else to add or to plug? I know you mentioned the meetup. You mentioned, I don't know if we even talked about Code Platoon, but I think you also said you were. So if you're hiring, if you're looking for spaces, if you want to plug anything, feel free.
Yeah, so UHG, United Healthcare, and United Health Group, we have a bunch of names that we go under, is always hiring for like various roles. I think a good amount are remote. And yeah, Code Platoon is always looking for mentors and teaching assistants. And of course, the meetup that I run, computer.art, we are currently looking for like sponsors to host us. I do not care about like food, swag, or anything. Like if someone wants to host us, that is wonderful. Because I am.
You just need a physical space, what you're saying.
Yeah.
Cool.
That's it.
Great. Well, thanks so much, Brian. Thanks for being on.
Oh yeah. Thank you so much, Taylor.
Thank you for watching the technical interview portion of the Professional Technical Interviewee. If you want to tackle this interview question, you can find it at github.com/professional technical interviewee. New episodes are released on the first 4 Thursdays of each month. Find us on YouTube at youtube.com/Taylor Dorsett or on Apple Podcast or Spotify. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on new episodes. And remember, keep practicing.